This is the beginning of section 2 of the video, which the overall title is basically the effect of what's in it for me, the average frontline service employee at a distribution company. And we can talk about a lot of change we need to do in our business, but maybe the best thing to do is first zoom right in and focus just on you and what you expect from a job, what you expect from an employer. And if you went out and asked the average employee what they would expect, you would typically get a list that would look something like the following. First of all, they'd say, you know, I want a good wage for my job. But if I said, press a little further, so what's a good wage? You know, the average guy would say, well, it's about 107% of what the average wage is for that job niche. Now, every job in a distribution center is a commodity job in the sense that there are lots of warehouse people in town, there's lots of drivers in town, there are lots of inside salespeople, lots of distribution center managers in town. And there's a wage for these different jobs. And maybe there's a mythical average for that, and which is 100. So a little bit better than average would be a good thing. Of course, the next question is, well, what's a premium wage for my job? Maybe that would be pretty good. Second thing is, well, yeah, and not only do I want a good wage, I would like to have a real raise. I want to get ahead in life, so at the end of the year, if I got a raise that beat inflation and taxes, so I had more after-tax real spending power, I'd like that. And then I understand that medical insurance costs keep going up, and so the company keeps raising my copay, raising my deductible, raising my contribution per my kid each year, and it would be really great if kind of the company just ate that. So in theory, I'm still net ahead as far as spending power. A third thing that I might like is job security. You know, it's a good job right now, I'm getting good wages, etc., but how do I know it's going to last forever, or certainly at least for the foreseeable future? You know, I would like to live my life in a stable way. I'd like to have a mortgage, or know I could pay my rent on a regular basis, my car payments. So I want to make sure I've got a secure job stream income. And what can the company do to give me some hope that maybe just besides a secure job, if I were so inclined, not necessarily, but so inclined that, you know, if I showed up early, stayed a little bit late, learned, and, you know, did well, that I would be promotable. The company is kind of expanding, and so there are opportunities to promote from within. That would be great. Then my job is not just a job, it could be a career. The next thing might be, well, gee, I guess if I were to grow and have a chance for more responsibility, I would need a little bit of educational stimulation. And that's an optimal decision. Some people want less, some people want more. But at least I would like some. And then it would be fun to know just how I'm doing. A lot of times what I'm doing is kind of in a vacuum. I don't know if I'm doing a good job, bad job, etc. So a game is more fun if you can just know the score. If you're bowling and there's a curtain in front of the pins, and you roll the ball down the middle of the alley and it disappears under the curtain, and you hear all this noise and the boss says, just keep rolling them down the middle of the alley, it's not as much fun as if you can actually see the pins and know the score and what you can do to improve. And there are different levels of score. How I'm doing at my job, how our department's doing, how my service process might be doing, how our branch or profit center is doing, how the whole company is doing. Those are all interesting things in keeping score of the game of business. Now, if you think about all of these wishes and you add them up, you think, well, whoa, this adds up to a lot of money. What's the annual cost per employee? Just starting with giving a real raise of 2-3% in a low inflation environment. On top of that, medical benefits are creeping up. Well, they're going up quite a bit right now, but and you add the other things in, I'm going to guess you'd be looking at a 5, 6, 7% increase per year per employee as far as the cost of an employee. And the question is, where's the company going to get the money to afford this? And right away people say, well, you know, the company's rich. I think the shareholders, the CEO kind of has chests of gold in his office. You know, he should share some of that with me. Another thought might be, well, you know, maybe the company is making enormous profits. Sears Roebuck did a survey of sales associates back in 1993, and they asked them, well, when we sell $1 of goods, how much of that dollar goes to the profit line? The average answer was 45%, or 45 cents on the dollar, when in fact at the time it was only 1.7% before Sears paid its taxes to the city, state, federal government, which wipes out about half of that 1.7. So you think, oh, maybe there aren't as much profits as I thought. But a third solution might be, well, maybe if there aren't chests of gold, and maybe if the company isn't as profitable as I thought it was, and we'll take a look at that in later modules, then maybe it's possible that if we all work smarter, not harder, if we all work smarter as far as how we pursued our business, we could increase the productivity per employee, and out of that productivity we could afford not just real wage increases, but perhaps premium wages supported by the premium productivity. But now we're talking about everybody being responsible for how well the company does in growing employee productivity. Now, what's the best way of measuring employee productivity? In distribution, you sell stuff for $1, and then you turn around and take about, in durable goods distribution channels, about 75 cents of that dollar, and you pay it to the suppliers. So it turns out the durable goods distributor is only working on a markup or a gross margin of 25%. Let's take a look at a typical P&L statement for a durable goods distributor. Let's assume a company is doing $10 million in sales. Turns out at the end of the year they've written checks out for $7.5 million to suppliers. That's the cost of the goods. That's the value added the suppliers add. So when the stuff arrives at the back dock of the warehouse, and you get a bill for $7.5 million, that's the supplier's value added. The company then slaps a markup on top of that and says, all right, we would like to have another $2.5 million that we're going to bill the customer for whatever we think we're doing here in our business. And this gross margin is going to pay for all the costs of the business, the payroll, the rent of the building, the trucks, etc., utilities, and so forth. Now, when you look at all the expenses of a distribution business, typically as low as 50, typically 55 to 60%, 65% of all the gross margin goes for just paying for people. So that's the single largest cost. Then what you would do is subtract out all the costs of running the business, and the average industrial distributor in 1999 tax data came up with an operating profit of $170,000. In other words, they took 1.7%, kind of like the Sears story, 1.7% of the sales, $10 million in sales, down to the operating profit line, or profit before interest and taxes. Then if the company borrows money from the bank, they can deduct interest. That's just a tax convention. And then what's left, profit before tax, they pay maybe 50% of that out to the three levels of government. So now what you do is you divide the number of employees into the gross margin dollar, because gross margin is what we think our value added is for our customers, and you come up with some magic number. In this particular case study, you'd come up with $50,000 of gross margin dollar per employee. Now, if you look at that figure, what if we could come up with a bunch of productivity plays, doing it right the first time, etc., that allowed that figure to go to $100,000 in gross margin per employee? Well, then we'd be able to pay, premium wages for everybody, and we'd still be able to have a premium profitability. Now, what are different ways to, in a sense, grow gross margin dollar per employee? Well, we could say, let's just go get more sales. Instead of $10 million, let's go get $11 million in sales, but don't add any people. So margin goes up, but since headcount stays the same, then gross margin dollar per warm body goes up. But unless we're doing something different, we're all working 10% harder, and that's probably not sustainable. The second thing we could do is the sales could stay the same, but we could reduce the headcount. We'd say, look, not everybody is showing up on time and working hard and all that sort of stuff. Let's find the coasters, let's find the deadwood, let's get rid of those kind of folks, and then fewer, better people can, in a sense, do the job that has to be done, and that would increase productivity somewhat. But that's usually pretty limited. I think these days most companies are running kind of lean and mean, and most people are doing the best they can at their job, and so it's very unusual to find a company that's been so poorly managed for so long that there's just lots of dead wood around. So that means really we're left with the third best alternative, which is to figure out how we're going to grow productivity per employee, or gross margin dollars annually generated per full-time equivalent employee, that ratio. How do we grow that ratio through different kinds of productivity plays and rethinking of our alignment, working together, etc. That is going to be the big theme throughout this video. See you next module.